We've got a lot of enthusiasm behind this legislation that we intend to run this week through the North Carolina Senate. 3 bills that we're going to be running in judiciary are Senate Bill 40, Senate Bill 41, and Senate Bill 67. Again, these are common sense gun legislation bills. These are all bills that we think that even many of the folks on the other side of the aisle should be able to support. We had many moderate Democrats, such as Senator Batch, who ran on the idea that she supports common sense gun reform and common sense gun legislation, and that's what this is. These bills represent ideas that we've voted out of the Senate, voted out of the House on multiple occasions before. The first one is titled Protecting Religious Freedoms. The second one deals with the repeal of pistol purchase permits and the pistol purchase permit process. And the other bill deals with the very critical issue of safe storage of firearms. And I've got here with me primary sponsors, Senator Warren Daniel, Senator Perry, Senator Bobby Hoenig. Also, would like to mention the work that went on long before some of us got here that Senator Newton did on his work on pistol purchase permit repeal that I believe also led to helping us get this through the Senate and the House and to the governor's desk for his eventual veto last session. I'd like to turn it over at this time to Senator Daniel to talk about Senate Bill 41, Protect Religious Freedoms. We also have some pastors here that would talk about the direct impact that this bill would have on their congregation and their ability to keep their parishioners safe while they're in their place of worship. Senator Daniel.
Thank you, Senator Britt, and I do want to thank my co-sponsors, Senator Britt, Senator Perry, and Senator Hoenig for their support. Senate Bill 41, Protect Religious Meeting Places, is just common sense legislation that's really going to just repeal a loophole that shouldn't exist. As you know, in most North Carolina churches and places of worship, congregations are already allowed to decide whether firearms are allowed in their churches to protect their congregation. Many churches do create congregant security forces to make sure their people are safe. However, if a church actually has a school that they have instituted on their property, then they're not allowed to do this. It's unfortunate because a lot of these churches that are able to have schools are larger churches and have lots of members of their congregation. So what this bill says is that if a person is legally registered to carry a concealed handgun, that person can carry a handgun on the property of a church or other place of religious worship, provided that it's located on private property, it's not during school hours, no students are present for curricular or extracurricular activities at that time, and the person in control of the property has not posted a no guns allowed sign. To be clear, this bill will not allow for firearms to be brought into these spaces during school hours or on any public school property. This will allow churches and places of worship to provide for the safety of their congregants, should they choose to do so, at the hours permitted by existing law. And I would like to invite now some of the pastors who have come here to support this bill, Pastors Ron Beatty, Tim Rabin, and Richard Callahan, up to the podium if they would like to speak.
Thank you so much. I am Dr. Ron Beatty. I pastor the Berean Baptist Church in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We do have a Christian school attached to our church. Because of the law of this state, our churches with schools attached, sad to say, have become gun-free zones. Shooters choose gun-free zones because they're easy targets where they can do maximum damage in the least amount of time. Cowards go where there are no deterrents. Although our First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, we're here today as living proof that our First Amendment rights have been vacated even during non-school hours. A question needs to be asked: what would the founder of our churches say? He should have the right to speak. I'm talking about Jesus Christ, whom the scriptures state is the head of the church. We're not left in darkness as to his answer. As he was preparing to die for the sins of the world and realizing the depravity of the human race, he admonished his disciples to, if necessary, sell a garment and purchase a sword. He had been their protection, but would be leaving them, and they would need a means of protection from those seeking to do them harm. Sadly, we have a two-tier justice system in our state. Churches without Christian schools may carry weapons at any time to secure protection for their people. Churches with Christian schools, even during non-school hours, are not legally allowed to offer protection for our worshipers, even though our Second Amendment states that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Maybe we need to return to our early America where they had gun control. However, their gun control was defined as church wardens, deacons, or elders to check each man coming in to make sure that he was armed, and in many instances, if he was not armed, he was fined for not doing so. We're simply asking, make the playing field level for all churches, and not only one side, that we might have our constitutional rights upheld in protecting the body of Christ, the church.
I am Tim Rabin. I pastor Beacon Baptist Church here in Raleigh. We have a church school and have had that church school since 1977. If my statistics are correct, there are about 15,700 places of worship in the state of North Carolina. About 200 of those have a school ministry attached to them. So those 200 have no way to protect their parishioners during our services. Our campus is a little over 20 acres. We have 155,000 square feet of building. We employ one Wake County deputy at every service to help in the protection of our people. But you can only imagine one person trying to cover 155,000 square feet of building with somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people on campus is really an impossible task. But it would be prohibitive for us to have to hire all the people we would need to do that. So we're just asking that Senate Bill 41 be passed so that our congregation gets the same protection every other church or school, every other church or mosque or synagogue in our state receive. And so I'm here just on that behalf today, and I am thankful for the men and ladies who've been willing to sponsor this and are going to stand with it. And I just plead for us to have the same safety that thousands of churches in our state have every time they gather for worship.
I'm Richard Callahan. I am the pastor of Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Archdale, the home of our Christian school for the past 50 years, and we're very thankful to have a school, a religious school, a Christian school in our church. I'm also privileged to be the president of our North Carolina Christian School Association, which comprises 75 schools, 19,000, right at 20,000 students, touching some 200 churches and more than 100,000 homes and people across North Carolina that are concerned about the freedom and the Second Amendment freedom and the protection of their children while they are in our schools. Right now in North Carolina, it is a felony offense if anyone is on our church property at any time with a weapon. And that does not allow any protection. We have a bill coming out. I'm so glad for this Senate Bill 41. It's a wonderful thing to know that they're going to seek to allow us to protect ourselves during religious services. But those kids who will be there on Sunday that we will be able to protect under this bill, when they come back Monday morning, no one will be able to protect them. So we urge you to give consideration to this. I want to thank the men and women who are standing behind this. And again, we're very thankful. But all churches, all estimated over 15,000 churches, ought to have the same freedom to protect their property. It is a constitutionally protected right for every American. Thank you.
Senator Perry.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing those remarks. I'm Senator Jim Perry, and I think the remarks really hit home on why the Senate bill is so important. There's also a lot of misconceptions about this bill. We have varying data points on how many schools will be impacted by this, depending upon if it's elementary or all the way through high school. I've seen numbers as high as 500 schools. I know I have a number of them in my district. But let's be very clear, this isn't about a school. This is about a church. These bills are mischaracterized as being about schools. What these are as private property. It's not public schools. This is about a church and having the ability to enjoy equal protection like everyone else. Those guns have been allowed in those churches since 1995. And those of you who are students of history know that Republicans were not in charge here in 1995. This is a common sense issue. We should have equal protection rights. These churches should be able to protect themselves in that manner if they choose to do so. This is private property, not public schools. I heard a colleague say up here that Raleigh is the land of parlor tricks and politics. And that's a parlor trick to call this bill anything about schools or say it's protection of schools. It's about churches. It's Sunday. There's no church going on. There's no curriculum being taught. This is common sense legislation. Anyone who would say otherwise is being dishonest. So we think this is very important. This is purely about allowing churches to safely worship if they happen to meet at a location that also has a school on different days. So we would ask that you ignore the hyperbole and focus on what this bill really is and be honest about the outcome. We deserve equal protection in our churches. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perry. Next, we'll talk a little bit about Senate Bill 40. Senate Bill 40 essentially repeals the pistol purchase permit requirement. Pistol purchase permit requirement, as some of you may or may not know, is one of the old Jim Crow era laws that was used to restrict a certain segment of our population from possessing a handgun without going to their sheriff to ask permission if they could get that handgun. Anyone who purchases a handgun still has to go through the process if they're buying from a dealer of a NICS background check, which is a federal background check. What this does, this takes out the arbitrary requirement of that pistol purchase permit that individual has to get prior to purchasing a firearm. It does away with a law that has been in place to try to discriminate and arbitrarily deny the Second Amendment right to so many people within our state. In Wake County, for example, 3 times as many African Americans and persons of color are denied pistol purchase permits than any other segment of the population. So what we're doing is we're doing away with a law that should have been done away with a very long time ago. What we're doing is we're ensuring that folks who are lawfully possessing, lawfully purchasing firearms are still being vetted. We're making sure they still have the federal background check requirement before they purchase a handgun. But we're not requiring that additional arbitrary requirement of the pistol purchase permit. And what this bill does is a full repeal of the pistol purchase permit process. The next bill that we're going to talk about today is Senate Bill 67. I asked Senator Hainig to come up and speak about that bill.
Thank you, Senator Britt, and I want to take a minute to thank my sponsors, Senator Perry and Senator Britt, and I also want to thank the folks at DPS, the folks at DHHS, and the Wildlife Resources for all coming together to work on this bill. Common sense bill. What this does is it's an awareness initiative. It is a voluntary program. I repeat, this is a voluntary program. It would have the Department of Public Safety in collaboration with the Department of Health and Human Services and Wildlife Resources Commission launch a 2-year statewide firearm safe storage awareness initiative. We want the public to know what options there are for safe storage of firearms. It's that simple. It will include many methods of safe storage of firearms and information on state laws related to safe storage. It will also have links to web pages for various resources related to firearm safety, such as resources addressing domestic violence, hunter education, and suicide prevention. The bill will also include contact information for obtaining free gun locks. Again, this is a voluntary program. It is not mandatory, and thank you.
Okay. A lot of stuff we talked about. I did cut short a little bit of the pistol purchase permit repeal discussion of that bill, but essentially that is what that bill does. Had a lot of folks that wanted to come today and support and speak on these bills. There's not a single member standing behind me or a single member in our caucus that does not support what's in this legislation wholeheartedly. So if anyone's watching the watching the press conference and don't see your member here know that if they're part of our caucus, if they're part of the majority party, they support this legislation. If they've been here in the past, they voted in favor of this legislation before. Again, Senate Bill 40 and Senate Bill 41 have both been voted out of this chamber and voted out of the House chamber, landed on our governor's desk for veto. Some of each of these bills have actually had some Democrats that voted in favor of them prior to the veto discussion, and we hope to have those same votes again. As I said earlier, we had folks who campaigned on the idea of we need common sense gun legislation like Senator Sidney Batch, and here's her opportunity. Here's other Democrats' opportunity to support this common sense gun legislation. You campaign on it, stand by it, support these bills, and we're here for any other questions that you have while we're here. Myself, Senator Daniel, Senator Perry, as well as Senator Hayning and Senator Newton for any of the past work he did on pistol purchase permit repeal prior to 2016. You were first.
So as mentioned previously, measures, were any particular changes made to any of these bills with the most recent versions, maybe try to pull in some more Democratic supporters, or just to reflect what constituents are telling us?
Well, our constituents are telling us they want Senate Bill 40, they want Senate Bill 41, they want Senate Bill 67, and they want them as they are. When we passed these legislation through committee the previous times that we did, we took comments from Democrats in committee. We took comments from Democrats on the floor. Behind the scenes, we worked on these bills with Democrats as they moved through the last couple of times they voted. The version of Senate Bill 40 and the version of Senate Bill 41 is identical to what we passed through the Senate and through the House that did have some Democrat support on as it was voted on in the floor, as it was voted on in committee. So, yes, we took into consideration the other party's view. We took in consideration our constituents' view, and we took what legislation resulted from all the committee work that we've done in previous sessions, and we brought that forward, and that's what you're going to see with Senate Bill 40, Senate Bill 41. Senate Bill 67 that Senator Haynig has came up with, something he got through the House and many House committees last session, and that's been vetted on that side as well, and we hope to have all this passed through Senate J today and onto the floor.
Introduced everything by saying common sense. The history of the pistol permit requirement notwithstanding, in this day and age, how does easing access to guns, eliminating a regulatory hurdle, make common sense?
Well, what we're doing is we're easing access to guns to lawful citizens who are seeking to possess guns. We're not making it any easier for folks with mental health issues who they're going to get picked up on a NICS check. We're not making it easier for folks who have criminal background issues that prevent them from possessing or purchasing a firearm, because that's going to get picked up on the federal background check. What we're doing is we're making it easier for legal, law-abiding citizens to go out and purchase a firearm to protect themselves and to ensure that the Second Amendment freedoms that everyone in every other state in the country has, that our citizens in North Carolina have those same rights, because we believe that they should have those same rights, and those rights should not be infringed on, and we should share those rights as every other state does. And it's common sense because the requirement is so arbitrary, and because we still have the federal background checks to ensure that folks that should not be purchasing those firearms are not purchasing those firearms.
Are the numbers that much different this time around that you think a veto could be overridden? With respect, at least to the pistol permit.
In the Senate, yes. In the House, I think so as well. There's a Democrat member who signed on to companion legislation in the House. So I would say yes.
Senator Britt, I had a follow-up question on what you were just talking about with pistol permits and being able to still rely on the federal background checks. It was a few years ago that SBI did a study that found that local law enforcement had failed to report, I think it was several 100,000 criminal issues to this federal background check system. Is there, one, do you know if there's been any update to that? And two, is there anything in this bill to kind of incentivize local law enforcement to do better at that, or to make sure that all gets cleaned up? Has there been an effort on that?
So as far as you say local law enforcement issues, I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but what would cause someone or create an issue with someone purchasing a firearm wouldn't be reported from law enforcement. It's actually reported from the clerk of court, because that's where the convictions are occurring. So I don't know where you got your information from. If they said law enforcement agencies aren't reporting it and blah, 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 that's incorrect anyway, because law enforcement agencies aren't the one that reports convictions. It's the clerk's offices. And the clerk's offices, all that's way more updated as far as how quick it happens and how quick it's entered into a database than what it used to be, because everything is so much more up to date electronically than what it was in years past.
I think a key point too, Senator Britt, is that, a pistol permit is such an antiquated process. You go to the sheriff's office, they hand you this piece of paper that looks like the slip your teacher would give you to go to the bathroom in elementary school, and it's good for 5 years. So, a NICS check is supposed to be real-time federal information about a person's character and conduct. But, a sheriff's pistol permit is just a snapshot in time that's good for 5 years. Nobody has any idea what offenses that person commits 3 years after that piece of paper is handed to them. So I think it's really just antiquated.
Senator, do you have any Sheriff's Association members here? Is there anybody in law enforcement here today?
Not here today, but they did take a vote yesterday to support each of these three pieces of legislation. We're running out of space in the room, Mr. Aviv, and then. And I'm sorry. Do you want to follow up on that pistol purchase permit question, Senator Perry? Okay. Yes, sir. So that is correct. The pistol purchase permit repeals it for both private sales and public sales. The majority of the sales that you have going on between private individuals statistically are sales from law-abiding citizens. Those folks that are going to go get a pistol purchase permit, they're not the folks that are going to be committing illegal acts statistically at a higher number. And the majority of folks that are doing those private sales are not getting those pistol purchase permits now, according to all the agencies that I talk to. And
So just to follow up, that's not a significant concern that might sort of create a bit of a potential for some people to get a gun who maybe they shouldn't get a gun because they don't have to go through a background check.
since most people who are committing crimes and violent crimes, and this is just based on my 21 years of experience in the criminal justice system, prosecuting and defending, and that's all I'm basing it on, those 21 years. The majority of those folks aren't going to a gun dealer to buy a gun. The majority of those folks aren't going to go to their sheriff and buy a gun. They're buying a gun illegally anyway, and they're going to continue to do wrong. What we're doing is we're saying that law-abiding citizens don't go through that process, do not need to go through that process. They're the only ones going through the process now. The folks that are out there that are committing the crimes, they're not going to be going to lawful channels anyway. So I'd say the effect is minimal.
Final question.
Yes, sir.
I know that we've talked to a couple of opponents of the bill who claim that the current system is kind of a way of backing up the federal background check. In the past, that it's picked up things that the feds have possibly missed. What's your response to that?
The only thing that the feds have missed would not be a lawful inhibitor of someone purchasing a firearm. It would just be an arbitrary reason for denying that person the right to purchase a firearm or purchase a handgun. It would not be, because all the things that legally deny you a right to possess a firearm, those things are all picked up by the NICS check, which is why so many other states have done away with pistol purchase permit repeal. Yeah. Any other questions? Senator Perry?
Yeah, I'll just add, we have, when these things come up, we tend to have a lot of amateur sheriffs out running around, and we know who the constitutional officer is in every county that's responsible for the safety of the citizens. And if this was something that was going to put everyone in some type of great harm, I think this room would be filled right now with sheriffs from every county, and that's just not the case. So these are some issues that are created for political needs by some of our colleagues, and they're just not accurate.
Thank you. And thanks again. If we have no other questions or comments, thank you for joining us today, and come over to Judiciary and hear the bills again. Yep, 5 minutes. Yes, sir. Absolutely. I didn't see you here. I didn't know you were here then.